Do you hear
Yeah,
me?
yeah, yeah,
Huh?
yeah. It's better.
Okay. Okay.
Much.
So basically, we have to understand a lot of the Inyanim that I'm going to speak tonight. I assume that the listeners have heard and know, but for me, it's a benefit because when I have to give a shir, I have to study it a little bit better, so it helps me out also. But even if we know these inyanim, it's very good to continuously chazal them. There's certain inyanim that we say every day, 3 times a day, as semach davar avtcha with all the other shemon esrei and things like that. So therefore, anyone that knows these inyanim, and it seems not to be a chiddush, it has to be continuously repeated, and the chiddush has to be in the chayas. So to understand very clearly that we're not dealing over here with a Kates, which a Kates, I'm afraid to make my own mashalim, but maybe can be semi-compared to a lottery ticket, a great opportunity. I didn't study enough, but there's a book called Hakates from Rabbi Zalman Liberow, which I think is a very important book to study. And at the end of it, after he explains the whole union of Kitzim, but where the major difference is by in our case. So it's well known to everyone. I'm sure there's no Bar Beirav, the Chad Yema, there's no child that doesn't know today of the very famous Sikha of Shaftim. And in the Sikha of Shaftim, the highlights, I think there's a big chalik that's very demanding from us, which we also have to keep reminding ourselves that the Rebbe is expecting from us to act like B'Yemei Mashiach, where you don't need Shaitim, you just use Shaftim, which guide us and teach us what we don't know yet. But Shaitim is not an inyan of Geula, which that's what the Rebbe is expecting already now, because we are already in a Zman of Yigi Zman Geulashem. And Memela, we have to live already a Geula life. So we have to live a life where we only have Shaitim and not Shaitim. However, the other part, which is a very most exciting and so-called unique and a real chiddush, not necessarily a chiddush in the Rebbe's gadlus, because some people sometimes try to take it in the wrong way and try to emphasize the fact that there's no real chiddush of shoftim. The Rebbe is as great as he can be, but the chiddush of shoftim is that it's a category. It's a different category of what the Rebbe is being said, what the Rebbe is saying. That's the union of shoftim. Not that the Rebbe becomes a navi, but the definition of the Rebbe's besura is a nevuah. The Rebbe is megal in the sikha that the Rebbeim and the Rebbe's Meram is obviously on himself are neviim, which again, that's not a chiddush to us b'chlal. You know, that I think one of the, I don't remember who it was, one of the big chassidim said, if the Rebbe answer the question, if the Rebbe has Ruach HaKodesh, if the Rebbe needs Ruach HaKodesh, it's Ruach HaKodesh. That's not, the Rebbe has whatever he needs, and that the Rebbe doesn't get greater by these inyanim. But it's pashut important. The Rebbe wants us to know, after the Rebbe already gave a Hagdoma in Pashat Tzei, that we're talking about a nevuah. My nafkamina. What's nafkamina? The Rebbe towards the end of the Sikha says that we have a law, that we have to be mefarsim l'kol anshei adar, that there's a navi, and then he has a nevuah. So on the word nevuah, there is a maramokim. And before we even explain that, it's just interesting to note that even though the Rebbe sees his Surah Sagula as a direct hemshich to the Friedrich Rebbe's Besura that began in Tafshin Gimel, that was a Ketzel with the Friedrich Rebbe, and the Rebbe, throughout the years, always emphasized that this is one long hemshich. However, just like the Rebbe and the Friedrich Rebbe is one hemshich, Ad Kedei Kach, and the Beis Nissen, the Rebbe includes his years of Nasias, and the Friedrich Rebbe's years of Nasias in one unit, 68 years of Nasias. But nevertheless, it's Derech Shishi and Derech Shvi. There is a difference between the first 30 years of the Nasias, as the Rebbe calls it, and the next 38 years of Nasias, 70 years as of today. So over here too, we see, interesting, I've never heard too many people speak about it, but in the Rebbe's Sichas, every word that can have a Maramokim has a Maramokim. Every tiny word, the guidance that the Rebbe gave the people, the Menichim of the Sichas, is to push it, probably because of the union of Kolaim Adavar B'Shem Imrei, And every word, in other words, when you don't see a Mara Mokem, that indicates that this is a Chiddush Mamash from the Rebbe, or it's a different union. L'mashal, when the Rebbe says, Biz di Nevuah Ikris, the Nevuah as La'alta Legula, when take it from Yad Mamash in Azem Mashiach Ba. So when the Rebbe says the word La'alta Legula, which is a title that was used already by the Frierdiker Rebbe, so it's quite outstanding that the Rebbe doesn't say the word La'alta Le'tshuva, La'alta Legula. He doesn't say that tshuva is a condition to the Gula, because the Rebbe said many times before and after the Sikha, in the last Kufa, that tshuva is not an obstacle anymore. Ein adav toli ela b'tshuva existed till the time came. And therefore there's a Sikha in Cheshvan Tavshin in the base, I think, where you see the Rebbe say very clear, when he quotes that Rambam, which comes from the Gemara, you see, not only you read, but you see how the Rebbe is deleting a word. He doesn't make the full quote. He says, Ein hadava talui b'tshuva. And you see how the Rebbe goes, Ein hadava talui, and he makes a slight interruption, takes out the word ella, and he continues to do it b'tshuva, which is just the opposite. That in the Gemara and the Rambam says, Ein hadava talui ella b'tshuva, it depends only on tshuva. But now it's Ein hadava talui b'tshuva, it's not depending on tshuva. And the Rebbe continues, obviously, it does not mean chas v'shalom that the Rebbe says that we don't have to do tshuva weiter, because tshuva is endless. Even if a person reaches the level of a tzaddik, so tshuva is not a thing that ends. The Rebbe is just telling us that the amount of tshuva that the Eibishter was expecting for the Gula, that's been done. So it's not ma'akiv, just like Abbas Yisrael. It's not ma'akiv. We need to have Abbas Yisrael, mitzvah Kabbalah Mashiach, a higher level of Abbas Yisrael, the Kudas Ha'achdas Shalamayla Mitzchalkas. But at the same time, the Rebbe is confirming that that's not in order to bring the Gula. The Gula we deserved. So the Rebbe doesn't say La'alta L'tshuva. The Rebbe just says La'alta L'gula, immediate Gula. However, the Rebbe at least should have given a Mara Mokim to the Frierdiker Rebbe's, as usual. The Rebbe, in other places, the Rebbe probably does send us to the co-kairas of Tavshin Gimel. Tavshin Aleph, Tavshin Gimel. So here the Rebbe doesn't give that Mara Mokim. He doesn't send us there, because it seems to be that this La'alta L'gula is absolutely a whole different inyan l'chura. This is just my understanding, based on the fact that the Rebbe doesn't give a Mara Mokim to the word La'alta L'gula. But getting back to the subject that I began speaking about, on the word Nevuah, that's the Chiddush of the Sikha, that the Surah that we heard from the Rebbe before, and for us Chassidim, it didn't make a difference. But in a way, it does make a difference, because the Rebbe is giving us an extra Basura. He's telling us that, technically speaking, the Basura of the Geula till now didn't have that definition that the Nevuah has. What is that definition? To make it even stronger, if anyone has the Sefer, I'm sure everyone sitting at home now, which that's, by the way, stam on the side, I'm sure everyone's paid attention, that we know that the Eibush, everything he does is good, but not always we see it, or at least not right away. But in Corona, despite the terrible tragedies of Corona, there's unbelievable milas. Just the fact that a message, I'm sorry for going again on the side, but a message that once upon a time, there's so many obstacles to give a message of the Rebbe, to bring it out. I mean, in a place, where I am in Flatbush also, a lot of newspapers, even friendly, I had a newspaper that's very friendly with me, and I want to put something a little bit, not talking about Yechi, something real, Gula, I have an obstacle. They won't put it in even with money. Actually, want to put in the Sikh of Shaftim, written in a way that we thought would be suitable even for Flatbush, and it wasn't allowed in. So, but now you have a reason to drive around all the streets with a video screen, and everyone's at home. Thousands of people saw yesterday things that they never saw in their life. Only Corona accomplished it. The fact that nowadays it's to come to Shir and to verbringen. If you asked me to come to Shir and I had to put on my jacket and my hat and take a car and drive and fall asleep on the way, these are major problems. Nowadays, I'm a chaya. Nowadays, you open up, you're giving a Shir, everyone can take out the sefer from the Sfarim Shafa and see right away. Everyone has the sefer. There's so many Meiradik Inyanim that are happening now. So let's hope that we stay only with the good Inyanim, and all the other Inyanim should evaporate. So whoever has the sefer with him on page 792, 116, The Rebbe says on this word nevuah, he emphasizes it. You're not relying on our understanding, but he actually says, "Lo rak b'ter chacham v'shefet, ela b'tur navi." It's not only as a chacham v'shefet, which that's the titles used throughout the sikha, but in other words, you can use a title tzaddik or tana, whatever it may be. There's different titles, different, like we know, there's Kenim, Nevi'im, Anshe Knesset Agdela, Tanoim, Amiroim, Rabban Sveroi, Gainim, so on. Over here, Chacham V'Shefet is the title used throughout the Sikha, so which is great titles. But still, this nevuah that the Rebbe is saying about the Gula coming immediately, the Alter Gula is not as a Chacham, not as a Shefet. And we may say maybe even not as a Rebbe. What's not as a Rebbe? I don't know, maybe I shouldn't add that. But a Rebbe, without the definition of Navi, there's a lot of conditions. When a Rebbe gives a bracha, and the bracha is not niskayim b'leinei bosa, does it mean that the bracha is not true? Chas v'shalom, like we're still going to learn. While derech ze chacham v'shefet. It doesn't mean it's not true, but there's conditions to be able to make it happen b'gashmis. Here, says the Rebbe, it's not being said as a chacham v'shefet, it's being said as a navi. I already explained part of the question. One can right away ask, so what's pshat? What does it mean? What difference does it make? So the Rebbe continues and he says, Shazehu bevados. The Navi, when he says it, it's bevados. So the question gets even bigger. Dafka, the Navi says it's bevados, and the Chacham and the Shefet and any other title of a tzaddik, it's not bevados. How could that be? So for that, the Rebbe sends you somewhere, and he tells you, Re'eh, you must look. Over there, you'll get an answer to understand why is it bevados, and also at the same time, not chas v'shalom, that the chacham and the shefet is not bevados, or not true chas v'shalom. So we have to look up in this maimer. I think what I said till now is probably well known, but the maimer of the Alter Rebbe may be less known, possibly. That's the nature usually. So let's look up in the maimer of the Alter Rebbe. If I knew how to make a picture on Zoom, I'll put it on, because that maybe not everyone has handy, I'm not sure. But is there a way to put it on Zoom? Huh? Anyone home? No. No. So, in this Maimer, the Alter Rebbe explains the Gemara in Baba Basra, where it says Chacham Odif Minavi. Chacham Odif Minavi. Chacham again is the title used in the Gemara, which means Tana, Tzaddik, versus a Navi. In other words, let's take for example Amos, or the last three Naviim, Chagai, Zechariah, and Malachi, and let's take for example Rebbe Akiva, one of the greatest Tanoim. So a Navi usually sounds much more directly connected to the Eibishter. Navi talks in the name of the Eibishter. Says the Gemara, Lav Dafka, that the Navi is greater than the Chacham. He's not measuring which Navi, which Chacham. But there's a Matthias that even though he's a Chacham and he's not called a Navi, he still can be Adif Minavi. Chacham Adif Minavi. What does that mean? So he says like this. A Chacham Amiti b'Chachmas Emes, a true Chacham can reach in Chachmei Law in the highest levels. And through his reaching in Chachmei Law, he's able to also see futures, which he sometimes shares with people. He says Asidus in a way similar to Navi. He's talking about future. However, on the way down from the high Olamus, Lav Dafka, that future will actually materialize. Lav Dafka, that will actually come down to Olam Hazeh in the way it was described to us. And sometimes it can be the other way around. I'm not going to read all the words over here, but basically he brings a particular example. He says, it says in the Zohar, quite a strong and powerful source, it says about a case in the year of Tach. Tach is 1648. And everyone knows what happened in Tach v'Tat. Terrible things happened. A case we don't know of any geula that happened then, we know just like that. Could it be that the Zohar said something not true? Ella, the Zohar didn't say it as a nevuah. The Zohar saw this inyan of Mashiach in connection to Tach, Shnas Tov Ches. He saw it in Chochmei Law, because Mashiach exists in every world. But in order, until Mashiach will be materialized, there can be many changes because of different obstacles that happen. And here in the last few lines over here, the Rebbe Mamash, this is such a powerful statement from the Rebbe to send us over here to explain why and what is the definition, why the Rebbe is using the word, and what does it mean? What's the chiddush of the word nevuah? It says over here, but this inyan of a case will enter to the mouth of a navi, then that will happen b'li shum shinoi, without any changes, meaning to say it will happen literally the way it is being said. It will not happen only in Ruchnius, it will happen begashmius as the way it was spelled out. Because with the level of the kus that's revealed down here below into the level of dibur, which that's the inyan of a navi. A navi is named navi because of the fact that he verbalizes and he says the words of the Eibishter. When it comes down at that level, then it's already done. It's already here. Nothing is left out, even the most tiniest detail all comes and is all not all true, because even what the other tzaddikim say is true, even what the Zohar said is true. The word is over here that it all materializes. What the Chachamim were masig, there was a shinoi, meaning to say, in terms of how it was nisgashim. It wasn't nisgashim, so it ended up being in this world different than what they said, different than what they saw in higher worlds. Mashiach, when it's down here, it's literal. A mashal possibly, again, all these mashalim, I love dafka b'diyakim, but a possible mashal would be in a skyscraper. They have different elevators. There's not only one elevator that goes to every floor, but there are elevators that speed, and they don't even reach. Let's say in a building of 100 floors, it can only reach the 80th floor. Then there's other elevators. They're not speed elevators because they're not made for everyone. There's and special offices, and they go up to the 100th floor. So someone who has access to the 100th floor, it's a great miler. He can reach floor that not everyone can reach. But the chisaron is that it takes a long time for it to come down. If he wants to bring it down, he cannot use the regular speed elevator. So it takes time. Till he can bring down from the Eitzis of the 100th floor, there can be so many obstacles. Because it takes time, therefore, the elevator can get stuck. The elevator can turn over chas v'shalom. So many things can happen to that Eitzer that he's bringing from the 100th floor. However, when the Navi says something, he might not reach the 100th floor. Chacham adif min Navi. Maybe he's not as great as the Chacham. But because he's a Navi, what he says, that inyan speeds down and it's in the lobby. When he says it, it's already down in the lobby. So it doesn't make a difference. Nothing can hold it back from materializing because he already brought it down. Same idea is semi-explained in a mimer called Kuntres Chav Kasivan that the Rebbe gave out in the Tafshin Nun Aleph. So there's a mimer Parach Mate'aren where he explains how the difference of the din that a person has on Rosh Hashanah about Gashmias, there's a decision about the person's Gashmias, and then there's Nidun B'chol Yom. So the way the Rebbe explains it, why is it not a stira? Because the din that goes on in Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, that's still Beruchnius. It's about Gashmias, but it's still in the higher worlds. In order that it should come down in our pocket, Baruch Aleinu, Rafa'inu, Baruch Aleinu, in the most literal sense, for that there's an union of Nidun B'chol Yom. And he explains it with a mashal of Maisa Sheba Machshava till Maisa Sheba Maisa. And Mamela, as long as it's not a Maisa Shabbat Maisa, there can be obstacles, Zocha, whatever it may be. It still remains true. The chesed that's been given from him, for chesed atzilus, is true. And it's gonna somehow unfold and reach the person. But we Anashim Gashmi, and we need it down here, Lamata. So our actions, B'chol Yom, triggers a need in B'chol Yom in order to be able to have it Lamaisa. But when it's down here, it's down here. And that's what the Rebbe is explaining very clear. We're not talking about a kates. Don't compare it to a kates. It's already here. It's down. And this goes along with numerous Lashonos that the Rebbe used throughout this special year of the Aleph and Beis and the Hemshech and Gimel and Dalet, where we see how it's a major difference in so many areas. This is not the topic of the Shia now to begin quoting. It's been already collected in so many Sfarim in the end of this book, Kakeitz. The Oisius that the Rebbe uses, the Gula is already in the world. We're touching the Gula. We see it. It's not only that, we even see it. We see how the world is so different than it used to be. In other words, things happen dafka in a gradual way because the Eibishter wanted it should be in the Eifin of Ein Ben Olam Hazeh Moshiach Shiur Malchus, which means that it should not be in a drastic, miraculous way, but rather it's dafka, like the Rebbe explains in Achar Kedoshim and Emer, one of those two sichos, how dafka, the same world, the same world of Goyla is the world of Gula, with the one small major difference, which is the Aleph, but it's dafka in the Oisius of Goyla, to emphasize that this world, that's why everything comes in a very gradual way. But if you pay attention and you open your eyes and you understand, you focus, you're mistakel, and you see, you're misboinen, you see that there's a major difference. Take, for example, the Union of the United States of America. The Rebbe talks about it in the end of Achar Kedoshim. A Malchus Shel Chesed. The Rebbe keeps repeating it. And this is basically a step into Yemais HaMashiach, where the Goyim, where Klippas Esav, who Edom is no more an obstacle, no more a mania. But that was only still quite for a while, but only a chelik in the world. And even America, before the Frierdiker Rebbe came and after the Frierdiker, we can't compare. Because even though then it was no persecution, and Yidden were able to do Torah mitzvahs, but there was a different Eifin. It was Eifin Be'eretz Asher. It was very hard to be a Yid. But then when the Frierdiker Rebbe came to America, it changed the whole thing. Then the Ikke is in Tavshinun. What happened in Tavshinun? That it spread to the whole world. America and the Soviet Union is already almost the whole world, and then all the rest of the countries. So now we've reached a point that we don't even have Shibud Malchus anymore in terms of Torah mitzvahs. And even the Shibud Malchus that's not connected to Torah mitzvahs is also our own problem. We invite it on ourselves. So now we're in a time where there's no actual mania from the world. The Rebbe uses these words in the Sikh of Gimel Tammuz and Aleph. At the Welt is great fartik. The world, which is the Keli, the Olam Hatikun, is ready. And the Rebbe continues, and even a Yid, even the person himself, it's mashma from the Rebbe Sichos and Aleph and Beis, has murdered koiches that he never had before. So it's all about that final touch, which is very small in quantity, but very enormously important in quality. And that is called Tut Al Tosir Kent. Or like the Rebbe says, the last Oisius in the Maimon Purim Katan, Avoida B'Koyach Hatzmei. It's something that's the Tachlis HaKavana. And to continue, also to explain both Nakudas together in another mashal, which again, I'm not that it's a mashal that I didn't see anywhere, so I hope it's right, is the difference of Kitzim and now is that comparing it to a long journey, that also is, there's a mashal that's brought somewhere, the difference of why Kitzim was once forbidden, but getting closer to the Gula, the Kitzim itself were mutter. Because that's the whole Sefer HaKetz from Herzl. He explains it by Riches, but one of them, a mashal that explains the Bekitzer is that when a father and a son go on a long journey, and immediately the nature of a child is right away to ask. After Mazalgafar and 10 minutes, he asks, "No, when we're coming?" So the father tells him, "Why are you asking? It's not no point of asking. We just started the journey. It's a long journey." He asked another few more times. His father made him quiet, and so he got used to it. He stopped asking. Then tomorrow, 20 hours later, he hears his father ask the driver, "No, when are we coming?" He says, "Father, why are you asking?" He says, "Well, what are you comparing?" He says, "Then when we were in the beginning of the way, it was a child to ask. We still have to keep driving, and we have to do so-called Torah mitzvahs to keep driving. But now I have to know when he's coming because it's a few miles away, and I got to get dressed, ready for to come to the destination. I have to change our clothes and be ready." So But that's only in the Indian. That doesn't explain it really in a real difference. It's just the Eirech Hazman, we're closer. Where are we holding now to explain it better? So we're comparing it again to a long trip that we're taking with a plane. So the Indian of the Kitzim can be compared possibly. Also, when a ketz is said ahead of time, a particular date, the Chas v'Shalom doesn't mean that tzaddik is narrowing it down only to that date. Delaying it to that date. When a tzaddik says a certain date, 100 years before, 10 years before, a few weeks before, what does he mean? He means that the Mashiach is going to come then. He is a pilot, and he needs to land the plane for whatever reason. Generally, landing a plane in an emergency landing is negative, but when the plane is in trouble, so to say, and an emergency landing is positive. It's almost like amputating someone, chas v'shalom, that has diabetes, take off his foot. It's positive, negative, whatever, but he has to make the plane land. So the tzaddik, the pilot, sees ahead because he knows, and he sees ahead opportune location. You can't just make emergency landing anywhere. You look for an opportune location to make the emergency landing. Now, the pratim in this mashal, there's a lot of details over here. The mashal, if the tzaddikim would have actually been able to bring the gula by those kitzim, there would have been a loss, the loss of certain mitzaytzes uchulu. Al derech, like if you make an emergency landing, the trouble of getting out of that location, you have to come down to the earth, but you have to climb mountains and uchulu. There's a lot of other issues that are negative when you make an emergency landing. However, the tzaddik still wants to make that emergency landing because it's trouble to be in a plane of gullus, and he sees ahead. So he says, look, in 50 miles or 100 miles, I know the map, and I know that it's a good place to make an emergency landing. So at that point, he tries to incite the passengers, but they don't. It's not really demanded for them to do much because they're passengers, and what can they do? But they have to do the minimum. They have to listen to his announcement, and they have to fasten the seatbelts and be ready for an emergency landing. What happens? The tzaddik finds out that Sinishgi going in, and the Olam shluffed, and they didn't hear the message. It's too dangerous to make that emergency landing, whatever, and he lost the opportunity. So the plane flies by. And as they get to on a whole bunch of different opportunities. That's the kitzur. When it comes Yud Shvat Tovshin Yud, you can compare it to Moshe Lamar Davadayme to the fact that the plane already is hovering over the airport. And the Rebbe's Mediyah already then that it's a fact because we're already here. We're already here. So now there's other obstacles. The wheels don't open up. The runway is not ready. Snow, ice, whatever. And there's different inyanim that have to be done. And the Rebbe works very hard to try to bring the plane in the actual airport. Yeshleima, then in Tav Shinun, when the Rebbe says Higia, Meloshin Higia, Higia's Mangolastem is when the Rebbe brings the plane down into the airport. And that's when everything starts changing drastically. That's when the Rebbe allows us identify the Rebbe as Moshiach, when earlier the Rebbe wanted it, but he limited it. But then it became already, the limits were almost all gone. And so many other inyanim that everyone knows, all these meridik between. But one of the very interesting between is that the Rebbe even says that the Gulan says, B'payel B'golay. It's already in the world, B'payel B'golay. What does that mean? Like the plane already landed in the airport. It's there. It's in the airport. What's left? Psichas Einayim, Psichas Adelis. The Rebbe actually uses that much of Psichas Adelis also. I actually once had a very interesting experience. The kids and Nimritz of Psichas Adelis. That I once years ago, I don't know why not today anymore, but Yon Tzaddik, in one of my cars, I had a loudspeaker that used to play Sichas. Kids, I parked it on Kingston Avenue once. I came to 770, and it was playing those Sichas that, what's his name, from Or Yehuda Friedman made a collection of Sichas on a cassette. Most of you over here don't even know what a cassette is, please, on a cassette. And all the B'suras Agula that the Rebbe said in the weekday, so I had a lot of different pieces that the Rebbe said in the Sichas in the weekday. Even the Mugadik Sichas really contained a lot of the Diburim that was said throughout the week. So I parked my car, and it wasn't such a rare thing, It wasn't such a rare thing that I should leave the keys in the car. And Kachav, I left the keys in the car, this time actually, luckily with the motor running, and I spent, when the meters were not so limited, so I spent more time in 770, and when I came out, I suddenly tapped my pocket, I seen the keys are not in my pocket, so I said, probably it's in the car before I go back to 770 to check. And Kachav, I see it's in the car. So now I'm trying to figure out, it's parked right opposite Weinstein by the fish store. I'm trying to figure out what to do. So someone tells me that Weinstein opens cars. He opens Machaya, go across the street. And yeah, he comes along with all his tools and he starts working. It's not going so easy. And meanwhile, the tape is playing already for a few hours. And he's working like for almost 5-10 minutes. And then I'm listening, meanwhile, to the tape, and the Rebbe saying to Mordechai Eliyahu, the last yechidus that someone had with the Rebbe, that in the room. So the Rebbe is telling him that in Lashon Kodesh, the Rebbe is saying to him that I've been saying that lo yirak shesefa geula lovei ela geula leimedes al safa pesach umechake shekol echad ve'echad yiftach hasaderes v'yischle v'segula l'techa chedesh le. The Rebbe makes his hand a notation. So when the Rebbe said the words mechake shekol echad yiftach hasaderes, that moment he managed to open the door. That was just an interesting episode I wanted to share. But basically the plane at this point, it's one thing that the pilot doesn't do. That's also the lashon of the Rebbe in the Sichos of Chavkas Nissen and Shmini and Tazria Metzera. The Rebbe keeps mentioning was meret lachreina as yeda eine darf ton sein chelik. What's this lachreina? Earlier we didn't have to do our part, but earlier our part was not so directly connected to Gula. You know, it's like fasten your seatbelt, so pay your ticket, pay for your ticket to fly in the plane, but you don't really do anything. It's done, like the Rebbe said it also in Purim Tashrim and Zion. The tzaddik is the one that does it. But now we reached the point that when we reach the part where the tzaddik does not do. The pilot is not the one that opens the doors. The passengers or whatever, the other people over there, but they have to open the doors. And over here, it's not only Yochel, but Yochel v'tzarech, like the Rebbe always says. We have to. The Tachlis HaKavana, the Eibish's Kavana is that we should do that part of Tutal Tzikhet. So it's about opening the doors. It's about waking up. We're so far schluffen and sitting in our comfortable seats in the plane. I'm not comfortable, but after such a long, tiring journey, and our eyes are stuck together, and then, like in the morning, and the Rebbe is begging us, wipe your eyes and open up and pay attention what's going on around you. We landed. The world we're in it. The Payil of a Gully. So it's a whole different. There's so much more about it to show how it's completely, no one should make chas v'shalom. And unfortunately, it seems to be that there are people that make that mistake. And they think that they Rebbe tried very hard, Taka Shalei Be'erech and other tzaddikim, but it didn't happen. By some people, they say, B'pem Mole, the Gimel Tammuz cut it out. Chas v'shalom ha'yelesiyah. And besides, even up Halacha, we see that there's such a major difference over here. We're talking about already something that we don't find in all the Deiros, except by Bar Kochba, that there should be someone that should be B'cheskes Mashiach. But Bar Kochba, Rebbe Kiva never said the Nevuah. And that's why that didn't happen. There was no Avtacha. Now, Sai, it's actually happening because the Rebbe is Heilichem and Natseach. Sai, we have a Nevuah. Sai, we see already. We see already. Even if you don't open your eyes pop open. If you don't tie them with chicken wire, and you see that so many things in the world are different. Only if you're action and you stand on the threshold and you want to dafka look outside the room, dafka, then you can look at it and say mikra nikas, like the Rambam says, and the Rebbe doesn't like to say the word. It's hepech harachmanas to say mikra nikas on any event. Kol shekein on the Yani Agula. So I think it's quite clear, very clear, even for someone that doesn't look into it too deep, can see that we are in a Zman Meyuchad Mamash, and Taka still additional 25 years of Gimel Tammuz and a few more years of Chazai Nada. It's hard to deal with it. Things became harder. Things didn't change. Gimel Tammuz only raised our level of Nisayan, which unfortunately we don't really want it, but unfortunately that's elevating us too. It brings us to a higher level of Emunah. The Eibishter is so proud. Moshe Rabbeinu's son of Me'od Mikol Adam, of Asher HaMechake. Asher HaMechake is dafka in a time when it's hard. And there's a sefer called Pirkei Cholos. It's a sefer that the Alter Rebbe brings in Tanya. It's a medrash, Lachman Tanoim, where he describes mamash, literally how this pasuk in Daniel is referring to a time where there'll be a certain level of his galus, and then there'll be a setback, and then people will suffer, and the Mashiach will suffer. The Ramban writes, Mashiach will suffer bizyonis, like it says in Kapitel Peites and Tilim, that Harimoisa Yemin Tzara V'Smachta Kolayvav. It's a shveret kufa, and dafka on these people that will wait and have the same emunah. Leim never Asher HaMechake. So it's only an opportunity for everyone to join into this movement of Asher HaMechake. And Taka nowadays, Bichlal and Koshike nowadays we have to be more and more careful to try to reach that point to be able to even tolerate people that are not yet with us in this Inyan. But to find the Oisius how to make this toyu be niskabel and kelim the tikkun, and to be able to be makabel pnei Mashiach Tzidkeinu be'achdus meleya, achdus that's suitable for kabbalas pnei Mashiach Tzidkeinu. It's very hard, Taka, but we have the koiches for it, and at the same time hold very strong, and will be zeicha, Taka, that chaf ir should be the gula amitis v'ashleim of Rafael Mamash. I hope I made things as clear as possible. And if anyone has a question, I can try to answer. If I know,